but enough for vulnerable groups to be able to raise their standard of living. This is how a caring government operates. Mr. Speaker, inflation numbers are showing that the purchasing power of our dollar is significantly less than it was in 2019. And yet, this administration is not taking inflation into consideration when adjusting wages and salaries and pension. Budget 2025 is now proposing increases in pension of 5,000 Guyana dollars and increases in public assistance of even less, 3,000 Guyana dollars. With a budget of $1.382 trillion, there is no adjustment to minimum wage mentions. Not for 1 second did they stop to consider the lowest earning per public servants in this country that is facing 44.8% increase in the price of food items in this country. Mr. Speaker, in 2002, when the IRI report was published, it documented that 57% of Guyanese either had enough to merely survive or had trouble feeding themselves and family. The PPP ran out and criticized this report, you would remember, but yet in this very budget report presented to the National Assembly by Honorable Ashley Singh, the malnourishment rate has gone up. Mr. Speaker, from 2020 to 2024, the PPP has budgeted $393.1 billion towards the health sector. I would repeat that for emphasis. The PPP from 2020 to 2024 has budgeted $393.1 billion towards the health sector. Yet, from 2020 to 2024, the data shows that severely malnourished increased from 0.1 to 0.5. And moderately malnourished moved from 0.5 to 1.5, sir. These are the numbers presented to this House by none other than the Honorable Ashley Singh. When audited on their ability to reduce inflation, the PPP administration has failed this nation. When audited on their willingness to increase wages and salaries, the PPP administration has failed this nation. And when challenged to show compassion for pensioners and the most vulnerable in society, the PPP administration failed Guyana. Mr. Speaker, let us look at jobs and education. The PPP don't want us to talk about jobs. That's why they abandoned the labor market survey for years. And to tackle the high and increasing cost of living, Budget 2025 is now proposing that every citizen either work longer hours or get an extra job to cover your expenses in oil-rich Guyana. In addition, this administration proudly claims that their idea of job creation is creating way for the building of hotels. To work in 2025, Mr. Speaker, with the largest GDP per capita, the PPP administration's bright idea of job creation is for its citizens to wash hotel sheets or mop hotels floor. And further, Mr. Speaker, their idea of job creation is for our citizens to work in a country and work in hotels that they cannot afford to stay in, Mr. Speaker. This is the reality of the PPP administration. And let me not forget, sir, the $11 billion that is being allocated to the continuation of the 10-day work program. A program that pays $40,000 for 10 days of work. And to further add insult, many of the workers are then politically exploited because they are facing the harsh reality in which many of them are barely surviving in indignities of poverty in this country, sir. At formulation, this policy was set to be aimed at providing temporary solutions for young people as they transitioned into more permanent jobs. An evaluation of this program would show the resounding failure to meet its objective. This 10-day work is now counted, sir, as the so-called job creation in Guyana. This administration is boasting about job creation and counting the 23,000 persons that they are employed in a 10-day work program, sir. How can you boast about 23,000 Guyanese being paid enough just to survive? How can you boast about 23,000 Guyanese being paid enough to live in poverty, sir? How can one standard of living raise on 40,000 Guyana dollars a month, sir? Mr. Speaker, one way of tackling poverty is through education. I am a living example. Like thousands of Guyanese, I struggled as a child throughout, and Mr. Speaker, I was able to attain a higher education and climb that social ladder. I wrote CSEC and then went on to do my bachelor's and master's, something that some members don't know about, sir. Mr. Speaker, the matriculation rate, this being the number of children who was able to meet the criteria to pursue higher education, is important to look at. Mr. Speaker, when we're looking at the matriculation rate, 2019, under the APN UAFC coalition, with a budget of $52.2 billion for education, the corresponding matriculation rate was 49%, sir. Yeah. Fast forward to 2023, under the PPP, Mr. Speaker, with a budget of $94.4 billion for the education sector, the corresponding matriculation rate was 26%. Oh, Mr. Speaker, last year's education budget was $100.5 billion, and the PPP administration has set a target of 28% for matriculation rate. Go to volume 2 of 2025 budget estimates. We're not making this up. Mr. Speaker, from 2020 to 2024, a total of $382 billion was budgeted for the education sector, and the matriculation rate fell from 49% to 26%. My God. The amount of Guyanese that have attained necessary certification for them to access higher education has decreased by 23% under the PPP administration. Mr. Speaker, when audited on value for money in the education sector, a performance audit would show the PPP incapable of delivering. Mr. Speaker, it was Ralph Emerson that said, government exists to defend the weak and the poor and the injured party. The rich and the strong can better take care of themselves. It is in this light that budget should be formulated. When it comes to health, the most vulnerable in society, sir, the poor, depends on the government to make decisions and formulate policies that would improve access and quality to public health care. The health sector is one of the most critical sectors when it comes to caring for our most vulnerable citizens. A healthy nation would certainly be a sign of development. Mr. Speaker, Budget 2025. In Budget 2025, sir, the PPP had the audacity to budget $5 billion under the heading Supporting the Vulnerable Universal Health Voucher. This, Mr. Speaker, will be a direct transfer to their friends, sir, in private health care. This is the same administration that is boasting about how many new hospitals they are building, sir, and yet they are budgeting billions in Budget 2025 towards private health care, sir. $393.1 billion spent by the PPP for health care. And the doctor at the Tamiri Health Center, sir, don't have panadols or gloves or blades. $393.1 billion later, and that doctor has to fetch water to flush the toilet, while $5 billion is being budgeted in budget 2025 that is directed for private hospitals, sir. This is the reality of the PPP administration. Mr. Speaker, the doctor at the Tamiri Health Center has reported on the value received for the billions spent in the health sector. Shortage of medication and medical supply and poor working facility and working condition. When audited on value received for the $393.1 billion spent in the health sector from 2020 to 2024, the PPP is found wanting. Power generation. Mr. Speaker, I saw our Honorable Prime Minister speaking about budget 2025, and his eyes sparkled, sir, as he alluded to the trillions of dollars that is being spent by the PPP administration and how much more they intend to spend, sir. But throwing money at incompetence. Throwing money at incompetence, sir, has only proven to breed more incompetence. And such is the case of GPL, sir. Sir, believe it or not, 2 power ships and $16 billion later, we are now dealing with increased blackouts. It seems like the more we spend on power, sir, the more we spend on power ships, the more blackouts we are getting, sir. The Honorable Ashley Singh presented his idea of hope for this nation. The Honorable Ashley Singh stood in this house last Friday and boldly announced 2 measures to aid in this regard. He said, and I quote, "Our government is committed to reducing the cost of electricity for every consumer in Guyana by 50% once the gas energy project is completed." What measure is this, sir? In which country, in which budget do you come to Parliament and say, we are going to reduce your electricity costs by 50%, given that this project is completed? Sir, the PPP is notorious for not completing projects, sir. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, with a budget of $25.5 billion for power generation, the PPP is bringing a conditional measure into budget 2025, a measure void of any real benefit to Guyanese. And to further display their confidence in their inability to both complete the gas to energy and to cut electricity costs in half, they introduce another measure, sir. They will now be removing VAT on backup generation. Mr. Speaker, I can't make this up. You can't make this up. This is budget 2025 as presented in this National Assembly. When audited on their ability to provide reliable electricity and power, sir, it is found that the PPP has left us all in darkness. Mr. Speaker, supporting small businesses, the story of the Linden Enterprise Network. Mr. Speaker, small business development should be a key focus for any government that talks about private sector initiatives. So let us speak about how the PPP has been supporting small businesses. In particular, let us look at the Linden Enterprise Network, LEN. It is none other than the Honorable Minister Ashley Singh, who from budget 2020, sir, to 2024, let me edit that, stood in this very house year after year and made a mockery of the establishment of the board at LENSOR, a board that is necessary for small business owners in the township to be able to access loans. Mr. Speaker, almost $300 million is sitting in the land bank account, and not one small business in Linden was able to access a loan from it, sir, because the board was not appointed. And persons would note, we spoke about this. Every budget from 2020 to now, we questioned in this house, and every budget they promised to put it in place, 2025, it is still not done, sir. The 2025 national budget is allocating $335 million to the Small Business Council and Bureau while simultaneously shutting out and restricting almost $300 million from the small businesses in Linden, sir. This is the level of business that exists under the PPP administration, sir. An audit of accessibility to financing for small business in Guyana would show that the PPP administration only allow access to few while restricting access to others. Mr. Speaker, let us look at the debt and GDP. To borrow, sir, from Dr. Martin Luther King, the Guyanese poor, who represent a rapidly growing portion of Guyana's population thanks to the PPP administration, has been left to live on an island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity, sir. To the detriment of Guyanese, the wealth that the PPP is denying our people comes at a cost, which the PPP is more than happy to chain to us all. Over their term in office, the government mismanagement, the PPP has increased Guyana's public debt from $1.698 billion in 2019 to $7.637 billion in 2025. An increase, sir, of $5.939 billion or 1.24 trillion Guyana dollars. Mr. Speaker, allow me to put that into context for the benefit of the Guyanese public and for the Honorable Joe Hamilton, sir. From 2020 to 2025, sir, the PPP added a debt burden of $5.9 million to every household in Guyana. $5.9 million is not a small amount to the struggling families who are barely surviving paycheck to paycheck, sir. $5.9 million should have been used to take people from below the poverty line and providing them with a decent standard of living, sir. But instead, the increase in debt is being used to further enrich the wealthy while leaving the poor to help pay that bill. While 57% of Guyana's population can't afford anything beyond their most basic essentials of life, this heartless government has decided to saddle those very people struggling to survive in the indignities of poverty in this country, with $5.9 million debt per household, sir, while giving them none of the benefit that this mountain of debt is being allotted for, sir. Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Dr. Ashley Singh stood in this House last Friday and presented a comparison of debt to GDP using non-oil GDP during the coalition's administration and comparing that to oil-included GDP under the current administration, sir. How disingenuous of Dr. Ashley Singh, Honorable Member. Mr. Speaker, examining non-oil GDP is crucial for any prudent economic management because it provides a more accurate picture of the country's economic diversification and long-term sustainability, especially for oil-rich nations like Guyana, sir, as it excludes the volatile fluctuations in oil prices, which can significantly skew the overall GDP figures, giving a false impression of economic health when heavily relying on oil-related activities. Essentially, sir, it indicates the strength of the economy beyond the oil sector and highlights the development of other industries, signifying a more resilient economic base. So this is the comparison that Guyanese are looking for. And there's no economist out there that's worth their salt that is going to stand and say it is okay to compare oil GDP with non-oil GDP. Nowhere. Mr. Speaker, from 2020 to 2024, the non-oil economy of Guyana grew 36% in total. In that same period, the stock of debt grew by a staggering 253%, sir. That is a 7% growth in debt for every 1% growth in the economy. These are the real numbers. To put this into context, in the period 2015 to 2019, Guyana's GDP grew by 19%. The same period, total debt grew by a tiny 14%. For every 1% growth in GDP, the coalition increased debt by 0.7%, not even a full percent, This is the reality of our economy today and before. As shown by the AP and UAFC government, debt can be a useful tool for funding development when utilized and managed in a competent way by a competent administration. The PPP literally increased the national debt by 18 times as much as the coalition government, spent $2.1 trillion more than the coalition did, and only delivered 17% more growth than the coalition did. This is the brilliant authors that the PPP boasts about. This is what they have delivered to this country. The PPP's incompetence, can be truly astonishing at times. When audited on their management of debt to GDP, this reckless government has drastically increased the debt burden while failing to achieve economic growth above what they should have, Mr. Speaker, in closing, we are living in a country, Mr. Speaker, we are living in a country that is on the world map, We are living in a country that is on the world map because of our oil revenues. But instead of enjoying the fruits of oil revenues, we are living in a country that is now characterized by high inflation, low wages and salaries, high unemployment, poor matriculation rate, a country in which private health care is budgeted while public health centers are poorly equipped. Mr. Speaker, a country plagued by unreliable power supply, a country in which the government is deliberately shutting off resources to small businesses, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I'm being distracted a little bit by the Honorable Kwame McCall. But, Mr. Speaker, we are living in a country that we are blessed with oil resources, but this parliament is cursed with waste oil, Mr. Speaker, we are living in a country with a budget of $1.382 trillion in 2025. This country is not void of finances, We are not void of financial resources. This country is void of competent leadership. This country is void of a government that prioritizes its people over its own private business ventures. We are living in a country in which the government operates against its own people as economic gangsters, Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member, and congratulations on your most effective and efficient use of your time. Our next speaker is the Honorable Minister Susan Rodriguez, Minister in the Ministry of Housing and Water. Honorable Minister, you may start now.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to make my contribution to Budget 2025, and I take this opportunity to congratulate the Senior Minister, the Honorable Dr. Ashni Kumar Singh, and the Ministry of Finance for another phenomenal transformational budget, a budget that will guarantee a secure, prosperous, and sustainable Guyana. Mr. Speaker, I am a young female professional who is still fairly new to politics. I come from a family, a working class family, a grandmother who scrubbed floors and cleaned people's houses for a living. A grandmother who worked in the kitchens of Del Casa, a restaurant that doesn't exist anymore for the young people who are listening. And I listen to my colleague on the other side of the house disparage people who work honest jobs. Every job has dignity. This is the mindset I want the people at home to see. This is the mindset of the people who make up the members of the opposition. And in 2015, if we go back before, my family, as I mentioned, we started off as a poor family. And through sheer hard work and grit, my parents lifted our family out of poverty. Through sheer hard work and grit, under a People's Progressive Party civic administration. And in 2015, this group of people, sir, that make up the APNU AFC administration went to the young people who had mostly grown up under a PPP government and said to them, we will give you a good life. We will deliver a good life for you. And Mr. Speaker, immediately after assuming government, we had buyer's remorse. We saw immediately the destructive nature of the APNU AFC. We saw immediately how they destroyed the economy. They sent home 7,000 sugar workers, putting them and their families, 28,000 people, on the breadline, and they come here to feign concern for poor people. They sent home 2,000 CSOs, putting those young Amerindian people out of a living. Their idea of job creation, former President Granger said they must go and make guava cheese and plantain chips. That is the truth. That is the truth. Where was the outrage? Where was the outrage from young people like Miss Jurita Finance in the 2015 to 2020 period? Where was her voice? Where was the voice of all of the people who make up the members of the opposition when they were wreaking havoc on this country, when people couldn't find jobs, when people were sent to the breadline, when the private sector were closing businesses? There was no interest in this country. There was no demand created for people to open new businesses. Where was the support for small businesses when they slashed the grant for the small businesses? Where was their concern then? Mr. Speaker, we listened to the opposition members, and they will come to this parliament and distort the reality of what people face in this country under the APNU AFC tenure in office. And this was just 5 years ago. Just 5 years ago. And young people, and I'm so disappointed that young people like Jurita Finance would come to this house and make excuses for the APNU AFC. And that's why the young people at home who once thought that they could have given them a chance, I hope that they are seeing, I hope that they saw the destruction of the economy during those 5 years. They broke all their promises to the young people. They broke their promises to all the people of Guyana. They broke their promises to the farmers. They said rice is private business. And we can go through a list of all of the promises they made, even to the young people. They're talking about support for education when they raised the fees at the University of Guyana, where they put VAT on education, where they took away the grant from the school children. That is their philosophy. That is their ideology. And that is their track record. And that is what the people of Guyana have to remember when you come to this house and you pretend to care, and you pretend to care for children and women and young people. Even my honorable member recently contested for the chairmanship of her party, and she lost. And worse yet, look who she lost to. An older gentleman, but somebody with a lot of baggage. Her party didn't give her a chance. Contrast that, Mr. Speaker, contrast that with us on this side of the House. Recently, a seat became vacant in this National Assembly with the resignation of Honorable Dharam Kuraj Siraj. And who did we replace him with? A young, vibrant, a young, hard-working man, Member of Parliament Suresh Singh. This is how we treat young people on this side of the House. We reward them, we recognize their hard work and their contribution that they have to make. And we've given him a seat. We have other young people, young women like Sarah Brown, young, hard-working Amerindian woman who works hard, fight hard for the rights of Amerindian people. She sits in this House as a young member of Parliament. That is our track record. That is our inclusivity of young people and women. Ms. Finance said that people can't find jobs. Can you imagine? People can't find jobs. I don't know what fictional world these people are living in, and coming here to this House and trying to create as though people don't remember. As though people don't remember a time when they couldn't find work. People know now, families who are watching this debate, no, we just came out of Christmas. People know they can't find a carpenter. They can't find a plumber. They can't find an electrician. They can't find a painter. Because everybody is working. The construction sector has increased. People are hard at work. That is not a bad thing. That is a good thing. Guyanese fled this country in the 70s and 80s, fled on democracy, fled on democratic government, and migrated to the United States and other places, and did hard work, scrubbed other people's floors, and worked in restaurants, and today have made a successful life for themselves, and they come to this House and disparage those hard-working people. Mr. Speaker, this budget was presented a week ago, and I struggled to find one sensible criticism of this budget from the opposition. I struggled. But Ms. Finance will come to this House and tell you that this budget has nothing. It has nothing for nobody. That is the criticism that they will come to this House. But let me tell the public, Mr. Speaker, let me tell the people what this budget has for them. Mr. Speaker, this administration, the People's Progressive Party civic government, has policies that will take care of people from the cradle to the grave. Their entire life. Cradle to grave care. From the time you are born, every Guyanese mother will be given $100,000 compliments of the government of Guyana. From the time they start, the PNC, AFC, APNU, whatever they call themselves, put VAT on medical supplies. Under their leadership, it became more expensive to access medical care in this country, putting VAT on supplies and medication, making it more expensive. From the time the children start school, They will receive the Because We Care grant. They will go to school and get textbooks. They will get meals at their schools. All of that provided by our government's policies. They talk about old age pension. Can you imagine? Can you imagine that they talk about old age pension? We have kept our promises to all of the people in this country. Going back to health, the honorable member mentioned about a few who will benefit from the voucher from the Ministry of Health. Only yesterday, the Honorable Minister of Health had a meeting with 50 healthcare providers. 50 healthcare providers. Every lab that is registered in this country will honor that voucher. The voucher that will access healthcare, the eyeglasses for the children, the voucher for the cervical cancer screening. All of the healthcare providers will benefit from that proposal. Our promises to the farmers, investing in D&I, our promises to the miners, all of these were kept. And we saw what they did to the miners. Ms. Finance is from Region 7, a mining region. Where was her outrage? Where was her voice then? Where was her representation for the miners and for Amerindian people in Region 7? But you know now, Mr. Speaker, we know that there is no criticism, valid criticism of this budget. So what they have done, Mr. Speaker, the strategy now is to outpromise. The strategy now is to outpromise what we have done in office. So overnight we have posts popping up on Facebook about what they will do. The income tax threshold, they're promising $400,000 a month now, tax-free threshold. At one point, they said $100,000. Then when we raised it, we've surpassed $100,000. We're at $130,000 now. They've shifted the goalposts again. So now it's $400,000 they're promising people a month. But they increased the income tax threshold from 2015 to 2019 by $15,000. $15,000 they increased the income tax threshold from 2015 to 2019. The People's Progressive Party Civic has doubled the income tax threshold in our first term, moving from $65,000 in 2020 to $130,000 today. And coming back to the pension, let's talk about the pension, because they come here and they say they're concerned about the vulnerable people. They promised to double old age pension in their 100-day plan. In the first 100 days, the 5 years finish, the 100 days plan is not achieved as yet, but they promised the people to double old age pension. They moved it from $13,129 to $20,500 in 5 years. In 5 years, they are saying to the people now that we only give them $5,000 this year. $5,000 we have given in 1 year. Mr. Speaker, you know how much they gave the old age pensioners in 2018? In 2018, they gave the old age pensioners $500 increase. $500 increase for the old age pension. What a shame. Then let's talk about the students. Let's talk about the student stipend. They want to give students now, University of Guyana students, a $50,000 a month stipend. Who is going to believe this? Who is going to believe this? This is unbelievable. When they raised the tuition at UG by 35% and increased all of the administrative fees, making it harder for young people to access tertiary education. They put VAT on education. And now you're promising write-offs? It is done. It is delivered. The People's Progressive Party Civic has already delivered it. Salary increase. APNU promised APNU and AFC promised significant salary increases for government workers, nurses, teachers, etc. in their 100 days, another 100 days plan. But over the 5 years, and I don't know where Ms. Finance is getting her figures from because she quoted figures here. She didn't say where she got it from. Over 5 years, they increased public servant salaries by 38.5%. That's how much they increased public servant salary by. But you know, and that it took them 5 years. It took them 5 years to increase that. But in 4 months, Mr. Speaker, in 4 months of their government, they increased minister salaries by $50,000. Cash grants. They were against cash grants. Mr. Speaker, their Minister of Finance, Mr. Jordan, said that cash grants are not an effective solution for addressing poverty. Now they're promising regular and guaranteed cash grants over $100,000 a month. $100,000 a month in cash and benefits, plus 100,000 hard cash. Mr. Speaker, who is going to believe this? Who is going to believe this? They took away $10,000 from the school children and they're coming to tell the people they'll give them $100,000 a month. Every single Guyanese knows this is bluff. This is bluff. This is all gaff. Your track record tells a different story. Subsidies. They now want to give subsidies for water and electricity. They took away the subsidies from the pensioners. They took it away. We reinstated. We reinstored it. They put VAT on water and electricity and now coming with subsidies for water and electricity. This is also done. It's completed. We did the work. It is delivered. Mr. Speaker, and you notice, I ain't even come to the electoral fraud. I ain't even come to how the whole thing exploded at the end when the people of this country booted them out because of the arrogance and callousness that they witnessed from the opposition. So let's talk about the debt, Mr. Speaker. The honorable member mentioned the debt. Let's talk about the debt. Mr. Speaker, total external debt has to be measured by the size of the economy. You have to have capacity, sir, to service debt. People know that the more you are earning, the more your capacity to borrow. Mr. Speaker, there's nothing genius. There's nothing genius in that. Don't try to come here and overcomplicate something that is very simple for the people at home to understand. The more you earn, the more your capacity to borrow. What should people do, Mr. Speaker? What should we do? Should we tell the people, let's save the money, save all of the money, do not build the roads, do not build a bridge across the new Demerara River. We should wait until we have the cash to do it while people continue to suffer and spend time in traffic. We shouldn't build the bridge across the Wismar River. We should leave the Londoners to punish there. We should let people continue to suffer in blackouts. We shouldn't build the gas to energy project. Is that what they want? Is that their strategy, Mr. Speaker? Don't do anything? Well, that is characteristic of them. They did nothing in their 5 years. The ratio of public debt to GDP, Mr. Speaker, decreased from 47.4% in 2020 to 24.3% in 2024, the second lowest debt to GDP in the Western Hemisphere. That is a fact. Debt service to government revenue was 8.5% in 2020. By the end of 2024, it has fallen to 5.2%. This is prudent management, Mr. Speaker, prudent management. Mr. Speaker, they don't want us to compare 2015 to 2020 or 2025. So I'll do them a favor. I will compare 1992. I will compare 1992 to today. In 1992, sir, we were using 100% revenue to service debt, Mr. Speaker. That is the economy that the PNC left for us, a bankrupt economy. And the PPPC brought us through that period, through that difficult period, with prudent management. We brought this country back to a period of surplus, a place where we have surplus from dire economic straits that the PNC government left us in 1992. Are you telling people they should not go to the bank to access a mortgage to build their homes? Is this what they're telling the people? Why are they scaring people? Why are they trying to frighten people about debt? This is a grave disservice, Mr. Speaker, to their supporters and to everyone who is watching. The external debt in 1992 was $2.1 billion. 1992, Mr. Speaker. Today, you said you don't want us to compare your period. So we're comparing from 1992. $2.1 billion external debt. The external debt today is almost the same. In an oil economy, it is $2.2 billion. We were one of the poorest countries then. We had no capacity to service debt. Today, we are in a stronger financial position to service debt. It is nothing to be afraid of. It is how we are building the economy and building the infrastructure for the future. They racked up that debt of $2 billion, Mr. Speaker, in 1992 with nothing to show for it. Nothing. No roads, no schools, no hospitals. An impoverished country. All the people who are poor. People who are fleeing this country, migrating from economic hardships. That is the devastated position that we were left in 1992. Today, with the spending that we're doing, including borrowing, you can point every community that you go in to this country, you can point to all the schools, the hospitals, the roads, the bridges, everything built by the People's Progressive Party civic government. In the coast, in the hinterland, everything built. What did APNU build? One thing that lasted. What is one thing that you built that lasted? Nothing. What is one thing that you built that created value for people? Mr. Speaker, they will come and they will talk about infrastructure. They say people can't eat roads and bridges. This is the narrow-mindedness. This is the narrow-mindedness of the people who compose the opposition. We are building infrastructure, Mr. Speaker, to open opportunities for connectivity, to increase trade, for farm-to-market roads, to reduce travel time, to open new lands for housing, to build the water treatment plants. This is what people want, and this is how you use the resources to generate wealth and to build sustainable infrastructure that will last long into the future. And their arguments will be inconsistent over the next few days. You will hear the inconsistent arguments. On the one hand, we are spending too much. On the other hand, we should be spending more. But I want them to tell the people of this country who are listening, which project you would like us to cut. Which housing scheme we should not build. Tell us which housing area we should not build. Should we give out 500 house lots as opposed to 50,000 house lots? Tell the people, Ms. Finance. Tell the young people whether they will get their house lot under the APNU AFC government. I assure you they will not get it, Mr. Speaker, because they had a chance and they failed miserably. And even now, you would think that they learned their lesson. Even now, they're not promising to create house lots, Mr. Speaker. They are promising a rental subsidy. That is their bright idea to improve housing in this country. And that is not a new promise. That is a recycled promise from 2015, giving people a rental subsidy. They said this is an initiative to provide modern, safe rental accommodation by offering incentives to the private sector, the diaspora, and existing house owners for investing and renting middle and low income housing. This is their bright idea. This is their vision in their manifesto to create housing, to keep people renting, to keep people paying rent. We are empowering people by giving them home ownership, by putting a title or a transport in their hands, that they can go to the bank, that they can live in a home that they own, that they can pass on an asset to their children. This is how we are creating wealth among ordinary Guyanese people. And this will allow people to lift themselves out of poverty because of the conditions that we are creating through our policies. And Mr. Speaker, they benefited from the housing program, you know, Mr. Speaker, and they don't want the Guyanese people to benefit from it. Mr. Speaker, 69% of the opposition members have benefited from the People's Progressive Party civic government housing program. 22 out of 32 of them on that side of the house have house lots from the government of Guyana. What I can tell you too, Mr. Speaker, what I can tell you too is 100% of their house lots was created in housing schemes built by the People's Progressive Party civic administration. They didn't build any. They didn't build any new housing areas, but they come here to criticize the housing program, sir, that is benefiting, that has already benefited 41,000 young people in this country, 18,000 young women, single women who have benefited from house lots in the last 4 years. 20,000 young people, over 20,000 young people between the ages of 21 and 35 now own their own homes or land. APNU's big idea, their big idea when they were in government, Mr. Speaker, was a 50% discount. A 50% discount on the remaining 50% that people had to pay for their house lots. That is not a strategy to create affordable housing, Mr. Speaker. That is not a strategy, but that was their big idea. Then they went and they built duplexes. They built duplexes. And they didn't amend the legislation so that they can be able to pass titles for those who have paid for their duplexes. The PPPC had to come back into government to pass legislation in this parliament to allow the creation of title, the passage of title to the young people. We have continued to invest, Mr. Speaker, in support infrastructure in existing and new housing areas. Mr. Speaker, these are former cane fields that we are converting from swamp in certain places that we have to build up and sand-filling canals and creating land so that people can occupy their house lots. This takes time, Mr. Speaker, but it is happening, and people every day, ordinary Guyanese every day, are going to access their house lots and to build their homes. And Mr. Speaker, today it costs about $5 million to create a single house lot. And when a low-income family comes to pay for that house lot and pays $300,000, that is only 6% of the cost of that house lot. It is 94% subsidized by the government. And that is the beauty of the housing program, transferring wealth to people. And from the moment they occupy that house lot, it is already worth millions of dollars when we put in the support infrastructure, the electricity, the water. They can go to the bank and leverage the value of that house lot. We have further promoted home ownership through our housing construction drive, with 2,000 homes already completed across all income brackets. We've provided over 1,600 steel and cement subsidies to families for them to start building their homes. We have built already 129 core homes where beneficiaries have only paid $100,000 and they have a core home that they can start to build their lives with. Our target is to build 298 of these, Mr. Speaker. We have already distributed 798 home improvement subsidies for people to improve their existing homes so that they can have a better quality of life, Mr. Speaker. And looking ahead, sir, we plan to address all of the applications in regions 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, and significantly reduce the pending applications for region 4. The plan is already, we are already planning phase 2. We are already moving on to planning for 2026 and 2027 of how we will deliver another 30,000 house lots to the pending applicants. So the young people can look forward to that.
Honorable Minister, for you to plan more, you'll need an extension of time.
Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the honourable member, I wish to ask that we should given the 5 minutes extension as agreed to between the chief whips.
Thank you.
Thank
Minister,
you.
you may continue for 5 minutes to complete.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And what has been the impact? What has been the impact of this? What is the metric? So for those who are watching, this is the metric. We have seen the growth in the construction sector, growth of 30.8%, Mr. Speaker. We've seen mortgage and real estate loans grow by 71.9% over the last 4 years. This is ordinary people. These are Guyanese who are going to the bank, who are accessing mortgages, who are building their homes. This is what is driving the increase in the construction sector, not rental subsidies. Rental subsidies don't increase housing or provide affordable housing to people. The housing loans at commercial banks in 2020 at NBS, their mortgage portfolio was 3.5%. For the year 2024, they have already disbursed over $16 billion in 1 year, Mr. Speaker. This is Guyanese, regular Guyanese men and women who are approaching the banks with confidence and accessing a mortgage and building their home, their first property, something that will give them tremendous pride and security as they build a life for themselves and their families. In July 2020, comparing another bank, GBTI, 6.2 billion. Today, $18.6 billion for mortgages processed in 2024. Additionally, savings deposits held by individuals grew by 67.5% between 2020 and 2024. How much did it grow on the APNU? 1%. 1.4% increase in savings for 5 years. That is the results of your performance in government. People could only save 1%. This is the truth. Private sector credit increased by 19.8% in 2024, with a cumulative increase of 73.4%, only possible in a stable country with sound economic policies. Mr. Speaker, water. In the APNU Manifesto 2015, not a word about water, not a word about producing clean water for the people of our country. Instead, we found a water sector in shambles. We saw GWI was bankrupt. We saw lower level of service. We saw procurement breaches. We saw overpayment to contractors for services not yet delivered. That is what they did in the water sector during their 5 years. What are we do? We have rejuvenated the Guyana Water Inc. that is now in a stable and sound financial position. Service delivery has been improved nationally, and the implementation of our strategic plan to deliver treated water to 90% of our coastal population will be completed in a few months, long before the end of 2025. All of the people who have been calling on us about the quality of water that they are receiving, they will be receiving clean water long before the end of 2025, water that you can drink. We have already commissioned the first water treatment plant at Caledonia, and we have 6 other new large water treatment plants that will be commissioned in the next few months that will deliver safe and clean water to the people on our coastline. This is being built. Imagine, they're saying it's another promise. I just said we commissioned one of the water treatment. Are you not listening? We commissioned one. 6 are at testing phase, Honorable Duncan. 6 are at the testing phase. They're built. You can see it. It's at Cummins Lodge. It's at Bachelor's Adventure. They can see it. Mr. Speaker, I think these people live in orbit. I think sometimes they live in orbit. And looking across, sir, at the hinterland, our Amerindian brothers and sisters, we have increased supply in the hinterland from 46% in 2020 to 91% at the end of 2024, drilling 130 new wells in the hinterland regions with 40,000 Amerindians receiving first-time access to clean water. This is our legacy, Mr. Speaker. We deliver for all the people of Guyana. This is how the culmination of all of these programs, policies, projects in all of the sectors is how you reduce poverty and unemployment and inequality, and you usher in a period of prosperity for the people of our country. And so, Mr. Speaker, thank you very much for your indulgence, and I wholeheartedly commend Budget 2025 for passage in this House.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. And now for the Honorable Member, Ms. Geeta Chandan Edmund.
Chat who, Priya? Chat who? Chat who?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, today I rise in the August Assembly with a deep sense of responsibility, knowing that we, the members of this Assembly, have all, without exception, sworn allegiance to the Constitution and the people of Guyana. As we embark on the journey of 2025, allow me to extend my heartfelt wishes for a year of purpose, progress, and prosperity for all Guyanese. I wish to posit that our primary duty is for us here in this National Assembly is to adopt positions following principles that are consistent with the Constitution. So today I call on all concerned to let their honor and Constitution be their guide as we debate Budget 2025. Mr. Speaker, I sit on the opposition benches, and as a member of the opposition, it is my solemn duty. I am required to examine the budget that has been presented to this House and to faithfully and truthfully pass judgments on its projects, policies, and programs. But while I sit on this side of the House, when it comes to our homeland Guyana, I believe all of us on both sides of the House should be on the same side, batting for our country and our people. I earnestly believe that all of us on the opposition and those on the government side wants what is best for Guyana. Where we differ, I believe it is on the means by which we should get there. This is why I believe that these proceedings should not descend into a shouting match, but should be characterized by civility and a willingness to consider each other's perspective. Mr. Speaker, I believe that we all want what is good for Guyana. We all want a country with a growing economy that will provide resources to improve the lives of our people, including through the generation of employment. I believe that on both sides of the House, we would like to ensure that our people have a decent standard of living and can reside in safe communities. I believe that on both sides of this House, we want to bequeath a future for our children, in which they would enjoy universal access to quality education that adequately equips them with the skills, knowledge, and attitude to be productive, all-rounded citizens. I believe that we would all like to see a healthcare system that is improving constantly and aspires to provide world-class services and where there is greater equity across all the 10 administrative regions. I believe we want a Guyana in which we ensure that meritocracy is recognized and valued. I believe we would like to see a Guyana in which public services are efficient and reliable. I believe that on both sides, we would like to see policies in housing, water and sanitation, local government, infrastructural development, education, security, that uplift our communities and provide our people with a better way of life. I believe we would like to see measures aimed to support our pensioners, our youth, and women. At the heart of all these deliberations, debates, and decisions in this National Assembly, Mr. Speaker, lies a shared aspiration to see a Guyana united, free, and prosperous as a nation. We all dream of a country where our diverse peoples stand together as one, where freedom and liberties are not just lived rights, but a lived reality for every citizen, and where prosperity reaches every corner of our homeland. This vision should transcend party lines and personal ideology because it reflects the hopes and ambitions of every Guyanese. It is a vision of a Guyana where our resources are harnessed responsibly, our communities thrive, and our children inherit a future filled with opportunities and peace. I sincerely believe that on both sides of the House, there is a willingness to support positive programs, policies, and measures in the budget. Indeed, at sittings of this House, we have witnessed the unanimous passage of legislation. If we can do this for legislation, why can't we do this? Why can't we do the same for program, policies, and platforms that are in the best interest of our people? It is my view that both sides of the House must be committed to fully articulate their concerns, but at the same time, work together to ensure the budget and its implementation is for the benefit of the people of Guyana. Mr. Speaker, I've taken all this time here to outline these fundamentals because they speak to the core of what a budget should address and how we should approach it. This year's budget theme, Secure, Prosperous, and Sustainable Guyana for All, must be more than words. It must embody bold action and transformative reformation as we approach the conclusion of the government's current term. Today, I rise not merely as a member of parliament, but a citizen deeply invested in the future of our beloved Guyana. My passion stems from a responsibility to my country, my loved ones, and every Guyanese who dream of a nation where fairness, opportunity, and justice prevail. Words alone will not achieve this vision. We must act decisively to ensure a brighter, more inclusive future for every citizen. Mr. Speaker, Guyana is at a pivotal moment. Our rise as the fastest growing economy in the world is a remarkable achievement. Very few will deny that we are in a transformative moment in our country's history. The resources provided by and generated by the discovery of oil provides us with an opportunity to finally be able to realize our full potential as a nation, to lift our people, out of poverty, mitigate costs of living, promote hinterland development, bringing greater relief to the vulnerable, improve our infrastructure, and support the engines of national development, while social development and ensuring food and energy security, safe and secure communities. This is the challenge of Budget 2025. Growth as a nation, growth of an economy comes with great responsibility. We cannot celebrate economic success if there is inequality and inequity. With oil boom, there are realistic expectations for our people and from our people. One-off cash grants and payments and incremental policy adjustments are creditable, yet we must accept that they are not confront the entrenched issues of poverty, inequality, and exclusion. These are common issues that affect every single nation, and they are not unique to Guyana. This reality demands reform action and an unrelenting commitment to addressing these challenges head on. It demands that we take a stand for those who feel left behind, for those whose voices are drowned in the roar of progress. The question is no longer whether we will act, it is how decisively and how boldly we will act to ensure that Guyana's prosperity is shared by all. It is time to abandon half measures and half efforts. Policies must not merely aim to grow wealth, they must ensure its fair distribution and preservation for Guyana's generations. Former President David Granger spoke of a good life as a national aspiration. President Ali envisions a One Guyana. These are not just catchphrases. There must be blueprints for real action. The time now has come, Mr. Speaker, to move from rhetorics to results. It is only fair to acknowledge the achievements of this administration. Investments in agriculture, infrastructure, strides in education, and expanded social programs, the justice sector, etc. These initiatives signal progress, but progress alone is insufficient without equity and equality. No budget is perfect, Mr. Speaker, and this one is no exception. It is our duty as legislators not to settle for good enough, but to demand more equity, more inclusion, and more action. The opposition's role here is not to obstruct progress, but it is to push for better outcomes. Criticism is not opposition for its own sake. It is a call to address gaps, correct missteps, and ensure that governance serves all people, regardless of their religion, class, creed. Governance must not be measured by promises, but by the tangible impact of policies on people's life. Speaker, this budget highlights several areas where urgent and decisive action is required. Education reform. While new schools are being built, which is commendable, they must go beyond infrastructure. We need comprehensive education policies that equip students with life skills that will make them all-rounded, provide teachers with the resources they need, and ensure that every child, regardless of their background, has the tools to succeed across all 10 administrative regions. More so, Mr. Speaker, education has to be current to satisfy the demands of the change of economic and social environment that is unfolding. Progress in closing the infrastructure gap is commendable, but it must accelerate. Hinterland and rural communities must no longer be left behind. Integration into the national economy is critical to achieving equity. The gap between urban and rural regions must be addressed with targeted intervention to address disparities, creating opportunities for all 10 administrative regions to thrive. As we implement transformative policies, we must ensure transparency and vigilance against waste or mismanagement. Every dollar spent must tangibly improve the lives of citizens and contribute to building a sustainable future. Speaker slogans like One Guyana or a Good Life must be more than aspirations. They must become lived realities. Our people deserve governance that prioritizes their needs and deliver results. National unity, security, and prosperity will not emerge on their own. They require, like I've said earlier, bold and unapologetic action. The opposition has warned repeatedly of the risk of any mismanagement or mismanaging our newfound wealth. These warnings, Mr. Speaker, are not partisan. They are rooted in the desire to see Guyana avoid the pitfalls of inequality and instability. We must act decisively to ensure that our economic growth uplifts every citizen and create an environment where we can all thrive. The time for reform is now. This budget offers a foundation, but it is not an endpoint. It is a call to action, a challenge to every member of the House to do better for our people. Let us work together, not as adversaries, but as stewards of the nation's future, to build a Guyana that is secure, prosperous, and sustainable for generations to come. Mr. Speaker, I wish to address an issue of national urgency and international significance. The measures needed to elevate Guyana's security sector to global standards. As the fastest growing economy in the world, Guyana is experiencing rapid changes, bringing immense opportunities and emerging challenges, particularly in the realm of crime and security. Our country's economic transformation has increased our visibility on the global stage, and it may attract new and sophisticated threats, including cybercrime, transnational organized crime, trafficking, and financial crime. To ensure that Guyana's growth is sustainable, inclusive, and safe, we have to act decisively to modernize our security architecture. Mr. Speaker, while our security forces have long served this nation with dedication, the rapidly evolving nature of global crime necessitates reform to our system, tools, and strategies. Among the challenges we face are cybersecurity threats, transnational organized crime, and our geographical location makes us vulnerable to trafficking in persons, narcotics, arms and ammunition, etc. Financial crimes. With increased capital inflow, we may see a rise in money laundering, tax evasion, and illicit financial flows. Terrorism and extremism, domestic crime. Mr. Speaker, to address these challenges and as someone passionate about security governance, I propose the following measures. Enhance and fully equip the Cybersecurity Authority tasked with monitoring, detecting, and responding to cyber threat. Partner with additional agencies, international agencies, to adopt best practices for protecting critical infrastructure. Invest in additional cybersecurity training for law enforcement. Strengthening our border security, deploy additional advanced surveillance technology at key border points to detect illegal activities, continue to collaborate with neighboring countries to enhance intelligence sharing mechanism, increase the presence and resources of the Guyana Police Force and the Guyana Defense Force in border regions, transition to intelligence-led policing, ensure that our security equipment are modernized and are of global standards and quality, strengthens Guyana's participation in international security organization, enter into more and or strengthen bilateral and multilateral agreements with countries and agencies to combat crime, seek technical and financial support where needed and where necessary, bolster the resources of the FIU, ensure full compliance with standards set by the Financial Action Task Force, foster stronger police-community relations to build trust, expand programs that will address youth unemployment and education to reduce crime, additional public awareness campaigns on emerging threats, craft a comprehensive forward-looking national security strategy, establish a broad-based National Security Council to coordinate efforts between law enforcement, intelligence agencies, and policymakers. On this note of trading here, Mr. Speaker, I wish to place on record that the Guyana Police Force has demonstrated some commitment to improving law enforcement capabilities, professionalism, and road safety through extensive training programs and resource acquisition. There has been significant budget allocation for trainings in this area. Allocation of about 250 annually for training should underscore a prioritization of modern policing and capacity building. Training, however, must encompass specialized areas to address the multifaceted challenges faced by law enforcement. While several ranks benefits from specialized overseas courses, a greater emphasis on cascading this knowledge to broader police units is essential to maximize its impact. The consistent allocation of roughly around 250 annually for training indicates a prioritization, but, Mr. Speaker, underutilization raises questions about efficient planning and execution. Mr. Speaker, while we modernize our security system, we must also ensure that these measures uphold the values of accountability, transparency, and human rights. Independent oversight mechanisms must be strengthened to monitor the performance of security agencies and prevent abuses of power. As the people's representative, we in this House must ensure that these initiatives receive the necessary budgetary allocation and legislative support. We must prioritize investments in security as a foundation for sustainable growth and prosperity. Mr. Speaker, Guyana's economic growth is a beacon of hope, but it also makes us a target for sophisticated crimes. By adopting these measures, we can ensure that Guyana not only meets international security standards, but it also becomes a regional leader in safeguarding its citizens and its interests. I urge all members of the House to come together in support of these proposals, recognizing that security is the cornerstone of peace, progress, and prosperity. Let us ensure that every Guyanese can live and thrive in a safe and secure nation. I will now touch on the government's One Guyana Digital School initiative. The government's proposal to implement a One Guyana Digital School initiative is a bold step towards modernizing Guyana's education system. While the vision aligns with global trends, its success, though, depends on its thorough evaluation on its feasibility, inclusivity, and sustainability. As we deliberate on the 2025 budget, it is imperative to critically analyze this initiative to ensure that it delivers transformative results. A digital school, Mr. Speaker, could transform access to quality education by connecting students in remote and hinterland areas to the same resources as their urban counterparts. Interactive learning can promise to create an equitable learning environment. Modernizing education includes equipping teachers with advanced infrastructure tools and access to international expertise. This initiative aligns with the Guyana's diversification into a technology-driven economy. By equipping students with skills in ICT, data analysis, and AI, the digital school can position the next generation for leadership in emerging industries. And I'm very passionate about this here because as a mother, my children stand to benefit. However, without robust infrastructure, hinterland and rural communities risk exclusion from the benefits of digital education. Limited access to reliable electricity and internet could also deepen existing inequalities. The affordability of devices and internet access may also pose a problem for low-income families. Transitioning to digital learning demands significant teacher training. Resistance to change could also pose a problem. Hence, I propose the following. Prioritize investment in electricity, invest in high-speed internet. The option is always Starlink, Elon Musk internet. Infrastructure is the backbone of this initiative. Subsidize access to technology, develop a comprehensive teacher manual. Start with a hybrid approach. Involve parents, teachers, community, and all stakeholders. The government's One Guyana School initiative holds transformative potential for Guyana sector. However, realizing the vision requires strategic planning, decisive action, and unwavering commitment to inclusivity. By addressing these critical challenges, inequality, infrastructure, capacity building, and cybersecurity, we can ensure this initiative is not just a vision, but a catalyst for meaningful change. As parliamentarians, Mr. Speaker, it is our responsibility to demand smart investment, rigorous oversight, and stakeholder collaboration. Let us all in this House act decisively to create an education system that equips every child to thrive in the digital age and secure Guyana's future as a leader in education and innovation. Mr. Speaker, I will now briefly touch on some of the measures. The government proposes targeted measures to alleviate expenses for households and businesses. I will touch on a couple for the two sectors that I've spoken. Electricity cost reduction. A projected 50% reduction post-completion of the gas-to-energy project. Timely completion is critical for realizing this benefit. Reduced electricity and consistent access to electricity can positively impact both of the two areas I've touched on, the security aspect and education. Eliminating tolls for 50,000 daily commuters reduces transportation costs. Reduced transportation costs can provide easier access to schools and provide opportunities for students and teachers to have reliable transportation. The health voucher. A 10,000 voucher for basic tests targets 500,000 people. This can positively contribute to students having annual health checks. A healthy student population brings positive outcomes and attendance will be more consistent. The part-time job program. An 11 million allocation supports supplemental income. Student engagement and participation in the part-time job program can provide opportunities for training and at the same time offer students opportunity to gain meaningful experience to assist in national development. I have listened closely to what the Honorable Minister of Finance has said when he read his speech. It was not short on policies, programs, and projects. It highlighted what was achieved in 2024 and what is planned for this year. It was a budget that sought to capture some of the aspirations of our people and translate them into actionable measures. It is a budget that has announced some policies for community development. However, its success must translate to measures that reach down to the ordinary man and woman. It addresses in fair measure some of what we aspire to see. I have taken note of certain actions embarked by President Ali and his administration, and they appear to bear some mark of prudence, practicality, and pragmatism. Some of these measures, it would seem, may well signify a serious and considerate effort to advance towards the fulfillment of the objectives I have outlined. We must therefore all remain committed to contribute positively to ensure that the aspiration of our people moves swiftly to realization. I will not stand here in this House, Mr. Speaker, in good conscience and say that this budget is completely vacuous and lacks vision. There are some fair measures to alleviate cost of living. It is my view, Mr. Speaker, that consideration should be given for the abolition of VAT, which will serve to further
Honorable member, I've just given consideration to the time. If to continue, you have to get an extension.
Comrade Speaker, I do move that the honourable member be given 5 minutes to conclude her presentation.
Thank you. Honorable member, 5 minutes to conclude.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is my view, Mr. Speaker, that consideration should be given to the abolition of VAT, which will serve to enhance the quality of life of all the citizens of our beloved country. Any effort to unite our people is commendable. The consistent work among communities by this administration must be extended to all communities within the 10 administrative regions. I'm confident in the success of Guyana on the policies that translate to equality. Mr. Speaker, and while I sit on the opposition benches, I must say this: I see no reason why this budget should be a source of division in this House once our proposals and recommendations are considered. There are measures in this budget that can and should be supported by all sides. Measures that speak to the heart of what government is about, improving the lives of our people. Speaker, I started off my speech by saying that with growth comes responsibility. In the Marvel superhero movie, there's a famous line or phrase that says, "With great power comes great responsibility." President Ali must now demonstrate to the nation whether he shall soar to the revered role of the heroic champion, the hero Spider-Man of Guyana, and thus carve his name into the archives of history as a figure of great virtue and renown, or whether he shall instead take on the dreadful guise of the Green Goblin of Guyana. Consistent with my duty to act for the benefit of the people of Guyana, I lend my full support to the positive budgetary measures of this budget. Let us make this a moment where we rise above the fray, where we put the interests of our people first, and where we demonstrate that we are worthy of the trust that they have placed in us. Measures that alleviate poverty, I support. I support progress, I support peace, I support prosperity, I support commitment. I also support ambitions, I support liberty, I support inspirations. Before I take my leave, Mr. Speaker, permit me to thank the hardworking staff of the Ministry of Finance for their continued hard work and dedication. Working on the production of a budget is no easy feat. So kudos to all of you and thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. Honorable members, this is a good time to take the suspension.
We are a peaceful people, struggle is with struggle, and we don't look for trouble, just ask around. But when outside faces from foreign places talk about taking over, we ain't backing down. We ain't giving up no mountains, we ain't giving up no trees.